I hope it's visible to all. Okay, so when we're talking about the green development, so first of all, what is green development? I'm starting from the very basic. So green development is a real estate development concept that considers social and environmental impacts of development. Now it is defined by the three categories: environmental responsiveness with respect of low carbon growth, then resource efficiency, social inclusivity in this as community and cultural sensitivity. Now environmental responsiveness respects the intrinsic value of nature and minimizes damage to an ecosystem. Resource efficiency refers to the use of fewer resources to conserve energy and the environment. And community and cultural sensitivity, what we are terming here it as social inclusivity, it recognizes the unique cultural values that each community hosts and considers them in real estate development. Unlike more discernible signs of sustainability like solar energy, solar panels are more visibly green than the use of local materials. Green development manifests itself in various forms. However, it is generally based on solution multipliers like features of a project that provide additional benefits which ultimately reduce the project's environmental impacts. So now why green development is so important? Over the last 20 years, economic growth has helped to lift almost a billion people out of extreme poverty. But 1 billion people are still extremely poor. 1.1 billion live without electricity and 2.5 billion people without access to sanitation. For them, growth has not been inclusive enough. In addition, growth has come at the expense of the environment. While environmental degradation affects everyone, the poor are more vulnerable to violent weather, floods, and a changing climate. So, development experts, policymakers, and institutions like World Bank have learned a major lesson that if we want to succeed in ending poverty, growth needs to be inclusive and sustainable. Now, three areas are critical to achieve this. First one is access to energy, responsible resource management, and then good governance. First, people need access to energy to leave poverty behind. But the energy sector also has a very high potential for reducing poverty while making green gains. However, the electricity challenge remains daunting. In Ethiopia, with a population of 91 million people, 68 million are living in dark. Without electricity, children cannot do homework at night, people cannot run competitive business, and countries cannot power their economies. So this is why access to sustainable energy is a development goal in itself, and according to latest data, more poor people are gaining access to electricity at a faster rate than ever before. But the gains in renewables and progress in efficiency are too slow. Almost 3 billion still cook with polluting fuels like kerosene, charcoal, and dung. The second critical area for sustainable and inclusive growth shift is responsible resource management. The fishery sector, for example, holds many opportunities for smart and sustainable resource management. A well-managed blue economy can ensure food security, promote sustainable tourism, and build resilience. Ineffective fish stock management and illegal fishing waste $75 billion to $125 billion of global output annually, undermining food security and foregoing revenue. India has more than 2.6 million fishermen and it is world's second largest producer of wild capture fish. If it improves governance of the fisheries sector and invest in large-scale maritime transport and trade infrastructure, it can double fish production by the year 2025. Governance is the third area which needs urgent attention. For many countries, this is the biggest challenge. Estimates suggest that illegal logging generates approximately $10 billion to $15 billion annually worldwide. This is a problem of implementing existing regulations or designing better laws, and it is a global issue right in many resource-rich countries as well. Improving transparency and monitoring is the key. Government agencies often don't know the extent to which sectors are sustainable and which natural resources are being depleted. The energy sector, for example, needs more and better data on simple energy use and emissions. This comprehensive green accounting is currently lacking. But it is also a matter of leadership, building consensus, taking an vested interest, and juggling trade-offs to make the shift from dirty and exclusive to sustainable and inclusive growth. So, how can we overcome the obstacles to making growth sustainable and inclusive? There are many who fear that greening growth is too expensive, could slow output, or should concern only high-income countries. This fear is short-sighted. Sustainable growth is neither unaffordable nor is it technically out of reach, but it comes with challenges, including large upfront cost and long-term financing of 15 to 25 years. Few development countries have suitable capital markets or banking sectors. Improving the energy mix, for example, will reduce both environmental and fiscal risk. Turkey drastically reduced the share of oil in favor of gas. Thailand has decreased its dependency on petroleum products from two-thirds to a third. Another challenge is cost recovery and the right policy environment that ensures we are not only building schools but also improve education. No power station is of use if the utility company is operating at a massive loss. Few infrastructure projects can charge at full cost, so we should find ways to ease cost recovery while keeping services affordable for low-income families and communities. China has grown by double digits for decades but loses staggering 9% of its expecting GDP to brown growth. In response, China is shifting economic activity to innovation and higher value-added production. East Asia could take the lead on green development. Cambodia and Vietnam have integrated green growth plans, environmental resources available to poor and vulnerable groups. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change recognize green growth and poverty eradication to contribute to the vision of sustainable development. Now, India's 8-point intended nationally determined contribution. Number 1 is to put forward and further propagate a healthy and sustainable way of living based on traditions and values of conservation and moderation. Second is to adopt a climate-friendly and a cleaner path than the one followed hitherto by others at corresponding level of economic development. Then to reduce the emissions intensity of its GDP by 33 to 35% by 2030 from 2005 level. To achieve about 40% cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel based energy resources by 2030 with the help of transfer of technology and low-cost international finance including from Green Climate Fund. And to create an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent through additional forest and tree cover by 2030. To better adapt to climate change by enhancing investments in development programs in sectors vulnerable to climate change, particularly agriculture, water resources, Himalayan region, coastal regions, health and disaster management. Then to mobilize domestic and the additional funding development countries to implement above mitigation adaptation actions in view of the resources required, the resource gap, and to build capacities, create domestic framework and international architecture for quick diffusion of cutting-edge climate technology in India and for joint collaborative research and development for such future technologies. So these are the 8 points. India's intended nationally determine the contribution towards green development. Then green development in Indian context. The 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda with such 17 Sustainable Development Goals and 169 targets that were adopted in September 2015 demonstrate the scale and ambition of member states in the new Universal Agenda. The Constitution of India contains specific provisions for the protection and improvement of environmental quality. Article 48A of the Constitution says that the state shall endeavour to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country, and it shall be the duty of every citizen of India to protect and improve the natural environment including forests, lakes, rivers and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. Now these provisions highlight the national conscience on the importance dimensions of environment protection. The National Environment Policy of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change highlights important principles around sustainable development such as social justice, polluter pays, and entities of incomparable value. The National Action Plan on Climate Change along with the State Action Plan on Climate Change are important milestones for mainstreaming climate in development processes at the national and state levels. NAPCC has 8 national missions that outline priorities for both mitigation and adaptation to combat climate change. The current 8 emissions are on the areas of sustainable habit, sustainable agriculture, green India, water Himalayan ecosystem, and strategic knowledge. The government is proposing to set up new missions on wind energy, health, waste to energy, coastal areas, and also redesigning the National Water Mission and National Mission on Sustainable Agriculture. Under the Copenhagen Accord, India communicated its domestic mitigation action as an endeavor to reduce the emissions intensity of its gross domestic product by 20 to 25% by 2020 in comparison to 2005 level. More recently, in its intended nationally determined contributions, India has announced to reduce the emissions intensity of its GDP by 33 to 35% by 2030 in comparison to the 2005 level. The concept of green growth spans much beyond climate mitigation and adaptation and aims to achieve economic growth that is socially inclusive and environmentally sustainable. Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change recognize green growth in its vision, wherein poverty eradication along with green growth is seen to be central. The Finance Commission of India articulated green growth as involving rethinking growth strategies with regard to their impacts on environmental sustainability and the environmental resources available to poor and vulnerable groups. So it is clear from the articulation by the Finance Commission as well as the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change that inclusivity is central to green growth in India. The 14th Finance Commission has introduced forward-looking incentive-based grant rewarding the states with quality forest cover measured by moderate and very dense forest cover. Government of India has an ambitious renewable capacity target of 175 GW by 2022, and in the last 15 months the government quadrupled the coal cess from rupees 50 per ton to rupees 200 per ton, the proceeds of which will go towards the National Clean Energy Fund. The Smart Cities mission of the Government of India aims to promote cities that provide not just infrastructure but also give a good quality of life to its citizens, a clean and sustainable environment through application of smart solutions. Then India's green growth challenges. Now India is emerging as one of the fastest growing economies in the world and is currently Asia's third largest economy by GDP. India's gross national income for 2015 was 105.27 trillion with an annual growth rate of 7.4% according to Economic Survey 1415. The share of services sector is the largest in total GDP of India at 57% in 2013, followed by industrial sector at 25% and balance 18% being contributed by the agriculture sector. In 2014, India's total population stood at 1.29 billion and its share in the world population was around 17.84% globally. So economic growth seemed to have picked up in the last 1 year and it is expected to further improve in the further years. Now, for India to achieve development objectives, its economy should continue to grow, but for a country like India, where development is an imperative, environmental consequences can be substantial as it will place serious constraints on natural resources such as land, water, minerals, fossil fuels, driving up energy and commodity prices. The extent to which its economy will grow green will depend on its ability to reduce the quantity of resources required over time to support economic growth that leads to enhancement of social equity and job creation. So green growth could play an important role in balancing these priorities. It is observed that countries with higher human development have a higher ecological footprint and therefore as India accelerates its development journey to lift the millions of people out of poverty, the challenge before it is to provide improved quality of life to their citizens within the ecological space and constraints, and the fault lines on key green growth indicators are already visible, like we will discuss here. The first one is air and water pollution. Now, concentration of the pollutants monitored show that respirable suspended particulate matter concentrations violate the national ambient air quality standards for most cities. According to Central Pollution Control Board, class 1 cities and class 2 towns in the country generate around 38,254 million liters per day of sewage, of which only 11,787 million liters per day is treated and balance is discharged untreated. The next is forest. According to the Forest Survey of India, forest and tree cover spreads across 78.92 million hectares and constitutes 24.01% of the geographical area of the country. Now, there has been an increase in forest cover by 5,871 square kilometer compared to 2011 10 years back assessment by Forest Survey of India, but there has been slight decline in I no issues, ma'am. I'm continuing. And there has been a slight decline in moderately dense and increase in open forest category. There has been a decline in growing stock of the country by 389 cubic meters between 11 and 13, and which suggests a decline in quality of forest despite the overall increase in forest and tree cover. Next is biodiversity. Now, India is a mega diverse country with only 2.4% of the world's land area. Okay. India is a mega diverse country with only 2.4% of the world's land area and harbors a significant proportion of recorded species. Of the 34 global biodiversity hotspots, 4 are present in India, that is Himalayas, the Western Ghats, the Northeast, and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. According to International Union for Conservation of Nature Red List, 1,039 species were categorized as threatened species for India. The next growth, the next challenge in India's green growth is water. I think two simultaneous sessions are going on. Either you may call them. Okay, thank you, ma'am. So next challenge is the water in the India's green growth. Now India is moving towards perennial water shortage. The National Institute of Hydrology estimates water availability for India to be 938 cubic meter per capita per year. Now a country with less than 1700 cubic meter per capita per year is considered as water stressed. Now, irrigation is the heaviest user of surface and groundwater presently and is projected to be so even in 2025 and 2050. Additional water demand will come from the domestic and industrial sectors, and there is an urgent need for water efficiency measures in all sectors, but especially irrigation. Then the next challenge is climate change. Past observations indicate that the annual mean temperature of India has showed significant warming trend of 0.51 degrees Celsius per 100 years during the period 1901 to 2007, with increased warming during 1971 to 2007. Cotwell et al. And projections for 2030 will indicate a warming trend for the Indian subcontinent. The ecological impacts anticipated with even 2 degrees Celsius of warming are quite intense in itself, and the situation could be much worse at higher temperature rise. Another challenge is the energy. Energy supply in India is heavily dependent on fossil fuels, with coal and petroleum products together accounting for about 88% of the total primary energy supply. Now, most of the oil consumed in the country is imported, posing serious challenges for long-term energy security. According to International Energy Agency in 2012, so long ago, India had more than 300 million people who were deprived of electricity, and more than 800 million people were dependent on solid biomass as fuel for cooking. According to Census 2011, 43% of rural households used kerosene as primary energy source for lighting. And since energy access has strong development implications, this is a serious challenge that the government is currently trying to address. Next is the urbanization. Now, cities contribute to almost 2/3 of India's GDP and will assume even greater role as India embarks on higher economic growth. At the same time, Indian cities face severe challenges related to quality and availability of infrastructure such as power, telecom, roads, water supply and mass transportation, which could pose serious constraints to economic growth if left unaddressed. Now, these are the green growth interventions and their impact. The objective of this integrated techno-economic studies to understand the impact of energy-related green growth interventions on future energy demand, emissions, energy access, energy security, and developmental sector. Now, this integrated framework, which I will show you now, was used to conduct scenario analysis around the following green growth interventions. First is energy efficiency and conservation measures in energy demand sectors like agriculture, transport, industry sector, then commercial building and residential sector. Enhancement of modern energy access, promotion of clean energy supply through renewables and cleaner fossil fuel based energy generation technology, and resources, soil and water life conservation in the agriculture sector. So for understanding the implications of these green growth interventions on energy and development indicators, the 4 scenarios were considered in the type and range of interventions considered. And these scenarios are reference policies, ambitious 1 and ambitious 2. So there are different references in the case that. Then it's all about the policy implications. So when we're talking about the policy implication, the first implication can be in coal. As seen in the studies, that coal will remain the major source of energy until 2030. So thermal plants that use coal also need to undergo massive technological changes if they are to remain sustainable. Now, technological change will need regulatory intervention since the capital cost of settling up plants with up-to-date technologies are far higher as compared to subcritical plants. Renovation and modernization measures need a major boost. Research and development for clean coal technology needs a time-bound roadmap. Then oil and gas, for this sector, disclosure of energy usage and process-related carbon emissions should be encouraged to start with voluntary and progressively to be made mandatory, and this would lead to greater clarity and public awareness, which can further facilitate policy action in the future. Exploration and production contracts should include incentives for energy saving in operations, fiscal arrangements in the form of tax incentives, and can encourage the reduction of associated gas flaring. In the midstream oil and gas segment, a roadmap that plans an integrated fuel transport policy must be created. And in the refining segment, Solomon Energy Efficiency Index can be applied as a measuring standard that would help policymakers set reasonable energy use reduction goals in the medium and long run. To begin with, reporting efficiency according to the guidelines of such an index may be promoted. On the consumption side, a green gas quadrilateral must be created by setting up natural gas pumps along the golden quadrilateral highways in order to promote the use of gas as a transport fuel. Then renewables. Now India targets an installed RE capacity of 175 gigawatt by 2022, of which 100 gigawatt will come from solar power, 60 GW from wind energy, and 10 GW from small hydropower, and 5 gigawatt from biomass based power projects. Now renewable energy forecasting is required for grid security. However, due to lack of quality data and insufficiently developed forecasting tools, accurate RE forecasting is difficult, and significant amount of generation integration will depend on the accuracy of the forecast. To achieve low cost manufacturing and therefore lower capital cost and to capitalize on its inherent advantages in the solar sector, India needs strengthening and upgrading its solar R&D and manufacturing capabilities. The next is the transmission grid. Now, inadequate grid infrastructure is a key issue that needs to be addressed urgently. Across most of the states with significant RE potential, the grid doesn't have sufficient spare capacity to be able to evacuate increasing quantum of renewable electricity. So, a comprehensive program to introduce smart grid will realize lots of benefits, including better forecasting of demand and supply through centralized as well as decentralized power sources like renewables with better grid stability. Now, public-private partnership and engineering, procurement and construction models can boost infrastructural development. Higher deployment of advanced technologies such as the thermistor control series compensation, high surge impedance loading lines, high temperature, then high capacity conductors, multi-circuit towers and monopole towers are essential to enhance the power transfer capability of existing and new transmission lines. Now, there is a need for increase in the transmission system at higher voltage levels and substation capacities to support transmission network to carry bulk power over longer distances. Moreover, there is a need to optimize right-of-way, minimize losses and improve grid reliability. The next is the power distribution. Since the financial viability of the power sector as a whole depends on the revenues collected at the distribution end, it is vital that the distribution system is made financially viable. This can be made possible by improving the operational performance by achieving 100% metering to achieve 100% billing or collection efficiency and to reduce the commercial losses. Then nuclear, financial, administrative and most importantly statutory independence is absolutely essential for the power regulator, which can be achieved by the Nuclear Safety Regulatory Authority Act draft legislation that was tabled in the Parliament in September 2011. A public communication strategy that involves local and regional people, local business and organization in the decision-making process is essential, and there are good examples of public engagement best practices and strategies followed in different countries. For example, Finland follows a predefined timetable based on stepwise decision-making process for establishing a nuclear power plant. Now, on the national level, hydropower sector is governed by National Hydropower Policy of 2008 and various state governments have put in place such policies like the Hydropower Policy 2006 of Himachal Pradesh, Policy for Harnessing Renewable Sources in Uttarakhand with private sector 2008 hydroelectric power, so on. So these policies have framed laws that govern land acquisition, law and order, impact on the environment via environmental impact assessments and impact on the people via social impact assessments. Now it is important to look at measures to iron out the issues in the current policy framework and creating policy and institutional mechanism to favor alternative designs to increase dam life as also to increase the divergence. The designed and actual dam life must be taken into consideration. Now, greening of the transport sector in India would seek a holistic strategy that involves planned interventions in order to make a decisive shift to green transport. Interventions and massive investments are required in the coming decades in the form of modal shift actions, specific infrastructure development and upgradation of works, fuel and system efficiency, improvement and mobility management. An integrated data management system and center for regular monitoring of transport data can be set up, and the spatial arrangement of the various land uses or activities across the city is a very important factor in determining the intra-city travel demand. So therefore, any effort towards integrated land use and transport planning can significantly help in reducing the need to travel and lead to reduction in associated cost. Then electric mobility. Electric vehicles as a green growth intervention yield multiple co-benefits including energy security, job creation, reduced local air pollution. So Government of India recently announced faster adoption and manufacture of electric vehicles in India scheme, which is a step in the right direction, and however, in order to accelerate the uptake of this green technology, it is recommended that the scheme be further augmented with substantial additional funding and provisions made for granting 100% capital subsidy to state governments that are keen to adopt electric buses in public transportation. Financing models for green energy need to be customized to the specific financing needs of technology in different stages of innovation. Then new stock needs to be built on the principles of green buildings to accrue social, environmental and economic benefits. Technical options for improving energy efficiency in irrigation include facilitating upgradation of inefficient pump sets to energy efficient pump sets through the AGDSM program that seeks to establish viable models for public-private partnership. When considering the fast growth in the vehicular sector, more stringent steps could be taken. Instead of following chronological order for the norms, BSV fuel should be considered by enabling the Indian refineries to leapfrog from BS2 to BS5 and BS6. Old vehicles should be gradually phased out with proper scrapping mechanism in place. There is need for enhanced and faster penetration of cleaner fuels like LPG. Installment of air pollution control equipment should be made mandatory for all the industries, and efficiency of installed APCs should be checked at regular levels. Integrated water resource management needs to be explored for water conservation using rainwater harvesting and groundwater recharge as well as rejuvenation of lakes and ponds in the river basin catchment. Now linkages need to be established between research institutions, state forest department and private sector to produce good quality planting material. It is important to dovetail the national efforts for biodiversity conservation with the international goals and processes such as Aichi Biodiversity Target and Nagoya Protocol. Now the national targets are cross-cutting in terms of issues as well as respective jurisdictions of ministries of central government and state governments. Instead of following the usual end-of-pipe approach, waste management must be looked at holistically and preference must be given to reduction of waste at the source, and there should be efforts to institutionalize informal sector and modernization of recycling technologies. Informal waste recyclers can be trained to collect the waste from households, do decentralized water processing and trade recycle waste. The promotion of micro irrigation systems amongst farmers and in command areas will have significant implications on agriculture energy demand, and appropriate encouragement, incentives and subsidies for farmers to adopt these systems are necessary, along with awareness and training on deployment and use of the systems. Now the way forward. These are the key interventions which are recommended to foster green growth and development in India. First one is the mainstreaming in decision making processes. Climate resilient green growth strategies need to be looked at a cross-cutting issue that requires policy coherence and interdepartmental coordination. For further mainstreaming of environmental sustainability in decision-making processes, the government can adopt green budgeting for India, wherein all departments can prepare environmental budget statements highlighting key green activities undertaken in their respective departments. Then addressing data gaps. Collecting and synthesizing existing and new data is needed to facilitate preparation of strategies as well as evaluation of existing policy initiatives. Financing is critical to the implementation of climate resilient green growth interventions. In addition to public finance, private sector, banking institution and development agencies are also become important. Then commissioning pilots and technology demonstration. Now pilots needs to be commissioned in opportunity areas. Technology demonstration should be encouraged in the areas of renewable energy, waste management and renewable energy for cold storage application and natural resource management. This will help in upscaling of technologies. Enhancing financial, technical and institutional capacities of the government as well as voluntary sector is essential for the implementation of climate resilient green growth strategies. So detailed assessment of capacity building needs sector by sector becomes essential, and a greater engagement between government, research and academia, non-profit organizations and the private sector is needed to support implementation. Then there is a need to better understand and plan for impending socio-economic transitions such as urbanization and changes in the structure of the economy like increase in manufacturing. Skill development and vocational education need priority action to create opportunities in key green growth related sectors, especially renewable energy, buildings and industries. Thank you.